Test. Okay, I don't know if everyone well, I'm having some, technical difficulties here, I don't know what's going on. Give me just a second, everyone. Yeah, I don't know. Alright, yeah, I'm not getting let's see here. Not sure if this is gonna work or not. Yeah, I don't, huh, let's see here. Yeah, I'm not sure. Alright, I think I got it solved now. Sorry about this. Having some technical difficulties. Welcome everyone to BRAP. It is a, New Year's Eve, special edition on BRAP, and, yeah, it's like, it's, bit impromptu, if you will. I did mention though that I might do a show either yesterday or today, but anyhow, welcome everyone. I can't believe 2025 is done. Like it's a wrap. That's it. It's a wrap. Um, and it's been Let me drop a link here. Let everyone know we're live. It's been a great year for gaming actually. We'll talk about our 2025 video game review here. We discuss some of the news stories, trends, things like that, games that we played, and we might do in the new year, might do like a I don't know, maybe a 2026 show. I don't know. Um, I see a couple other content creators doing that, like 2026 preview program. Not preview program. What I'm talking about preview of 2026. Grand Theft Auto 6 kind of being I think the big thing that people are going to be looking forward to in 2026. I mean, the one thing to take away from 2025 is that Grand Theft Auto did not arrive when we initially thought it would. It was delayed again into 2026. But still, I thought 2025 was a good year overall in video games. I thought, for me, 2025 was marked by, um, one, me and personally speaking, not having enough time to play video games, right? To play the games that I want to play, and in part just because I don't have the time running around doing sports. I haven't even had the opportunity to really do Crossfire much. I've actually been missing quite a bit on that show just because my Thursday nights are pretty busy, with sports, taking the kids to practices, things like that. Travel baseball is taking up quite a bit of time. So yeah, it's just been a busy 2025. So, I really haven't had the chance um to play a lot of video games. And then, 2025 from an industry perspective, um as I look back at, um, some of the more recent news stories that we've had. Um, we had a tragic passing of industry veteran Vince Zampella of Respawn Entertainment. Um, we had the passing of the YouTuber influencer Lamar Wilson recently. And yeah, so there's been some tragedy here towards the latter part of the year with the passing of those two individuals who, one again being a YouTube influencer, and the other, providing a lot of being an industry veteran, really behind Call of Duty, and um, then Vince venturing off to start his own studio, Respawn Entertainment, and with that was born Titanfall, and then Apex Legends. Right, I think about the impact that Apex Legends has had. Um, yeah, and so again, Vince was the creator of Call of Duty. Him and Jason West went on to found Respawn, and then, as I mentioned, they're also behind Star Wars, Fallen Order, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So yeah, so tragic in that regard. But some of the other highlights of 2025, for me at least, were get Game Logic in here real quick. Got Gabe Newell here. What's going on, Logic? Logic, you can hear me. All right. So, like I was saying, for me at least, 2025 has been, um, at least for gaming for me, kind of a year where I just didn't have as much time for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Just didn't have as much time to game as I'd like to. And some of that was sports, doing stuff with the kids, work. Work was really, 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 really busy this year as I moved into a new role within my company. Um, Actually, a new group, I should say, within my company. But but yeah, I didn't get a chance to play a lot of video games as much as I've in previous years. I think that was this year was marked by probably more AAA gaming experiences. um, yeah, probably definitely a lot of AAA, I would say, because that's really kind of only what I've had time for. Although this holiday season, as I'm off work for break, mentioned this in the last show, went back and revisited Red Dead Redemption, and really really enjoying going back and playing that game. It's probably been about, I don't know, 14, 15 years since I played Red Dead. I'm not going to spoil the ending, because the ending, yeah, I won't spoil the ending, but I'm actually thinking about going back and playing Red Dead 2, which I have on PC. So actually, I think when I played Red Dead 2, I think I played it on Red Dead 2 came out in 2018, so I would have played it. I think I played it on PS4, even PS4 Pro. I don't remember. But I did get the PC version, and I haven't picked it up yet. Or I haven't played much of the PC version yet. I think I may have. This is when I either got the current build, PC build I have now, maybe the last build. But I did get it because I wanted to, experience Red Dead Redemption 2 and all of its PC glory. So, Logic, can you hear us? Logic is if he stepped away or not.
Yeah, no, I can hear you guys.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Logic, how were your holidays, sir? I know you're a little bit under the weather. Great to have you, but how were your holidays? Did Santa bring you any gaming related gifts?
Yeah, it's been pretty mundane. Nothing huge out of the ordinary. I did pick up a couple new monitors to put into the studio. So I've been rigging those into place and changing up the config here a little bit in the studio down in the basement. But other than that,
Okay.
yeah, pretty normal.
Yeah. How was now the I know we've talked a little bit during the holidays. You picked up was it a 38-inch OLED monitor, PC monitor?
So the 38 inches in IPS, and then I picked up a 32-inch OLED.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So 32-inch OLED. And how was the OLED? I gotta imagine
It's
it's
nice. It's nice. I'm on it right now. That's where I'm doing the podcast from. Um, yeah, the breakout thing for me, and I've only played Call of Duty on here so far. Um, the breakout thing for me is the visual clarity. Just I was listening to a podcast last week. I think it was the Full Nerd, and I think it was Will Smith who was talking about it. And he was talking about kind of the difference in what PvP first person shooters emphasize from a design perspective. And he was talking about Call of Duty, and he was saying Call of Duty and in Apex Legends, I would also say, kind of focus on the ability to hit really small targets, right, via ADS. That is what the overall emphasis of the game design is on. And like every year, it's a matter of like, can you even see the target, right, while aiming down sight? And Apex Legends like drives that to an extreme, to the point where I've never liked playing that game except for the brief period of time that they had the arena mode in place. Um, but Call of Duty is like that every year, and like it's every year it's can you pick out a target between like this you know mauve brown background, um, and every year it just gets to the point where like 50% of the time I'm not even seeing the target. I'm catching like the name label pip when it comes up in my ADS.
yeah.
Uh, but I played on here last night, and like the visual clarity, like I can pick out the targets now, right? I can see the targets now.
Oh
It's
wow.
working. So I'm gonna mess around with it a little bit and kind of see if that's prevalent across some other shooters, and see if that makes a difference. Probably I'm hugely interested to see how targets break out on things like Arena Breakout Infinite and Delta Force and some of the extraction shooters I've been playing. Um, but yeah, there was a brief moment in time when I hooked it up. I often call these my Sega Saturn 32-bit moments, um, where like the story of when I got my Sega Saturn and I brought it home and I watched like the Panzer Dragoon like intro video
Oh
for the
man.
first time.
Yeah.
Um, and I sat down with the full intention of like starting the game, and I saw that initial video. It was the first thing I put in the Sega Saturn, and I actually turned the system off, picked up the phone, called my brother, and said, "Dude, 32-bit makes 16-bit look like Pong." Um, and this was kind of that moment, like seeing it on the OLED. So I'm very
Oh
interested
wow.
to see what other games look like on it.
So
Um,
let
it's-
me
yeah,
yeah. Let me ask you a question, Am. Like what are they and I don't know if you know, I mean, are there any differences with the because I do game on my I do have my PC because my PC is close to my 65-inch LG OLED TV. Any differences in that the OLED panels on TVs versus like an OLED monitor?
I don't know, because I mean, so the system shock that I'm going through is you guys have been on OLED TVs because you play your consoles kind of in the
Yeah.
traditional, legacy sense of the term, right? On large screen TVs with like the best technology available.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't. So everywhere where I have a console connected is also a gaming station for a PC. So
Yeah.
this is my first OLED. Um,
Okay.
so I couldn't tell you what the differences might
Okay.
be between
Yeah.
a monitor and a TV using the same tech. Now this is also a QD OLED. Um,
Okay.
so
Yeah. No, I was just wondering. I with my OLED, and I really don't use my I have an Acer monitor. I really don't use my monitor much for PC gaming anymore. If I'm playing, unless I'm doing like an FPS where I want to crank up my I'm going to get the higher refresh rate, which my monitor has over my OLED. My OLED is only the max is 120. Um, but my TV does have G Sync, V Sync built in. Um, so um, but yeah, it definitely is. Like I notice, like if I'm playing a game, just visually speaking, and it's interesting you mentioned that wow moment with the Sega. I almost said Dreamcast with the Sega Saturn, because really that leap from 16-bit to 32 was a pretty big leap. I don't disagree with you saying that it makes 16-bit look like Pong, because it did. I mean, they were that generation in particular. I remember there were instances where you know um, and I remember even like firing up Final Fantasy for the first time, Final Fantasy 7, and seeing that and just putting down the controller, the intro. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? It was incredible. Um, but even with my TV, like I noticed that going from like even on the consoles, right? Like going from a when I had an LCD and I went to OLED, like it was I don't like using the term night and day, but it was definitely noticeable. You definitely notice the difference in picture quality, deeper black levels, things like that. Um, better viewing angles with the OLED panel than my LCD that I had here prior. So um
But
grab
Brap,
it. Yeah.
we've peaked on graphics, and so the answer is less powerful hardware.
I don't believe that. I mean, you remember the Matrix demo, right? The Unreal Matrix demo. Remember they gave that it was like a free demo, right? Where you're riding on the highway.
Yeah, I remember it happened. I didn't pay any attention to it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like people were like, "Oh my god, this looks so real," and like people's minds were blown. It's like, okay, guys, like this is probably coming at some point in the future. I would imagine we'll probably have games that look like that kind of really blur the lines of reality, right? So yeah, but let me grab these super chats here real quick. We have Andy Hart, 6138 with the $5 pound. Yeah, you will. We're here in the US and you're out there in the UK, so you'll be hitting 2026 5 hours before we do. But he says, "Hope you both had a great Christmas and a happy New Year to you both and all in chat. 2026 is going to be very interesting in the gaming industry." And then Andy Hart with a second super chat. Thank you very much. $5 pound super chat says Christmas highlight was playing PlayStation 2 classic games on my Stream Deck or Steam Deck through emulation on my 100-inch projector screen. Was incredible. Oh wow, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. They got to do that on a 100-inch projector. And speaking of 100-inch projectors, Hamp, I actually almost bought a 85-inch QLED TCL for my other room. And unfortunately, I got the kibosh on that. I got the no. even though my birthday's coming up here in 4 days, I was like, yeah, it's a birthday gift to myself. I still got the kibosh on it. And we don't need an 85-inch TV. I'm like, no, we do, just so I can move the other PlayStation to the 85-inch and experience gaming in an 85-inch QLED. So not even expensive TV. It was a TCL. I think it was on sale for like $650 for an 85-inch QLED. So I don't know how good those TCL TVs are, but but just for watching shows and movies, I think it'd probably be fine.
Yeah, that's one thing I definitely agree with. Again, a comment made during the Full Nerd podcast was maybe not the most recent one, but the one before was that there seem to be really good deals going on monitors. If you look around and for all of the doomsaying and the woe is me about RAM prices, again, I would say when things happen, our one strength as a human race is supposed to be that we evolve and we adapt. So if RAM prices are too high, then maybe think about like other upgrades that you need, like monitors. And that's one of the things I was like, I don't need to do any PC system upgrades right now. I'm Gucci with the current lab config I have. and I was looking around at monitors. None of the monitors were an imperative, but this 32-inch QD OLED was 630. Um, I was actually, when it came in, I was surprised because I swore when I looked at it, I was like, why is this thing so cheap? And I was like, oh, it doesn't have tilt, swivel, and height adjust. Like that's how it's like $100 less than I would be expecting it to be. But it showed up, and I was like, oh wait, this thing actually does have tilt, swivel, and height adjust. So, it's got all of the functions that I would normally have been looking for. So the one thing it doesn't have is a lot of these PC OLED monitors now have a feature called dual mode, where because they're trying to get like the high end esports people to buy them. But the esports people like aren't even satisfied with like 165 hertz. Like they want 240, and so they will have a dual mode where you can go to FHD mode to 1080p, and set the refresh rate to 240 hertz, and then when you are when you're at 4K or 1440p, then you get the refresh rate gets maxed at 165 hertz. So it doesn't have that, which is fine for me because I'm not like so competitive that I want to play at 1080p 240. I will play at 1080p sometimes, but like 165 hertz is fine for me at 1080p. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and Hamp, when you joined, I was I was just giving a quick like summary of my 2025 in terms of gaming. As you know, I haven't gamed as much as I'd have liked to this year. Part of that's just busy with work, kids, getting the kids to sports practices, things like that. So this year has really been for me the year of AAA games, big releases, because it's kind of my if
BRAP,
I'm like, okay,
isn't that the year for you every year?
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. As much as I appreciate the slander, good sir, it's not. But definitely this year. This year's definitely. It hasn't been all triple A's. I mean, I did play Dispatch, which I thought was a great experience, great game. Played a little bit of what is it? Shit. What is the game from Double Fine, the new one? I forgot now. Why is it escaping me here?
Keeper.
Yeah, I played a little bit of Keeper. But yeah, this year was really and I went back and as I mentioned to you, I've been playing Red Dead Redemption. And speaking of OLED, like that game looks pretty good for a 15-year-old game on the OLED. But yeah, it's just been mostly AAA games. I mean, there've been some really, even though I haven't played as many games as I typically do, I've still had some really good gaming experiences. And the one that's gonna really stick with me in 2025 is Claire Obscure Expedition 33. As I've mentioned on this show numerous times, my game of the year, one of the best games I've played this generation. And out of that Claire Expedition 33, I think the one thing that I think's really that I think's awesome is that the game was developed by a smaller studio, right? It wasn't a game that released from what I call the usual suspects, right? Some of the other studios that have a solid pedigree in producing and developing good content. And then Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yote being the more recent AAA game that I played. I thought it was good. Definitely enjoyed it more than Death Stranding 2. But those would be the three games that really stood out to me for the year 2025. And then as I think about some of the conversations, I'll get into some of the conversations of 2025. I think we saw kind of a doubling down, if you will, that the console space is dying and that exclusives aren't important anymore, which I thought was interesting. That seemed to really I think pick up a bit of I don't know, a bit of momentum, I think, in terms of the conversation around those two things. And I don't know why it's happening. Well, I know why it's happening, but I just think it's an interesting conversation that keeps happening over and over again. It's been pretty consistent throughout 2025. Um,
I think I also heard no one cares about AAA.
well, that was the other one. Yeah, no one cares about AAA. Yeah, that was the other one. You're right. And then we look at you look at Circana numbers, and you see that AAA games are like, tops on the Circana retail list. Um, and then the exclusive argument, people don't. There's no value in exclusives. The value is illusion now. I've heard that word thrown around now. That Microsoft realized it. Microsoft has had this awakening. The Xbox has had this awakening that they come to see that there's no value in exclusives. The illusion is gone now. And I'm like, oh, okay. So just some interesting things. I talked there early in the show, Logic, before you joined us, that obviously this year has been marked by tragedy. Talked about the passing of Vince Zampella recently, of Respawn Entertainment, the impact he had in the industry. Creator of Call of Duty. We you just talked about Apex Legends, Titanfall, and even influencers. Lamar Wilson passing away as well recently. So, but overall, Hamp, I got to say, I've enjoyed this year gaming. I think 2026 is going to be a good year for gaming. I think the one takeaway I think for 2025 for me too was Game Pass. Yeah, I thought this was the best year of Game Pass in terms of releases, day and date releases into that service. So, what about you, Logic? Yeah, go ahead, man.
It's weird, but I'll let it go.
What's weird?
The Game Pass assessment.
Well, why do you think it's weird? I'm curious now.
I don't know that anything about Game Pass this year, and this has been a steady theme of mine throughout this year that I've been more and more hyper specific about. I think, I don't even know if I want to say I or we or collectively, I really want to get out of the, things that I say that people get their feelings hurt because they take it as I'm saying that like what everyone else should do. Everyone else can render their own assessments however they see fit.
Yeah.
I take as a very cautionary tale the notion of an assessment that is solely self-measured. You know what I mean? Like, so meaning, hey, what Microsoft is doing with the Windows full screen experience, the Fizzy, right? Or in less sensationalist terms, just Xbox big picture mode, because that's what it is. When somebody says, hey, what they're doing there is amazing, right? And I'm like, okay, but let's hold the boat a second. That's a comparative statement in comparison to the current state of Windows, right? So I don't know that that's like, the groundswell, reward, trophy. Like that's like a participation trophy. Like you let this, I don't want to call it a turd, but like you let this thing out, it's mediocre. Now you're improving upon the mistake that you yourself made. Am I going to give you like a ton of credit for that? I don't know. I'm gonna maybe give you a little, but I'm gonna hold a little bit of that back too. And so when I look at Game Pass and you look at Game Pass in aggregate, right, with the price increases, the 75 new games per year, when tons of those games are the $2.99, $3.99, $4.99 type of games that show up out of the mobile space onto the eShop on Nintendo Switch, right? They're that equivalent level of fidelity. The pattern of behavior that we continue to see, which is, which was voiced by Matt Booty 2 years ago, which was, hey, Redfall is a miss, but we're continuing to see good traction in Game Pass. So how much of a miss is it, right? That is the total impact on overall quality. And then when I look at the titles that came into Game Pass this year, and I'm like, yes, there were consistent titles in Game Pass this year, but I don't know that there was anything that I don't know that there was a lineup that said to me, hey, this is the year that, the promise that a person could just subsist solely on Game Pass was like rendered into being. So it's absolutely an improvement, right, from the past. I just don't know that overall it really holds a lot of water in comparison to what other publishers are putting out. And I will admit as I go through that, there is some convolution in there, right, between Xbox as a publisher versus Game Pass as a subscription service. And I will admit it's difficult for me to make those two things separable. And I definitely can conflate the two.
So let me ask you a question, Logic. So do you think so I think like Game Pass. I think Game Pass this year I think hit that point where there was a consistent drop of games published by Xbox Studios. And I would contend that some of those games were good games. I don't think there were games there that were game of the year contenders or games that had a cultural impact in gaming, but they were good, and I think they were. I think the cadence of releases was better than previous years. At least for me, it's at least this year for 2025, they kept me engaged, right? They kept me subscribed to PC Game Pass by releasing, games that I was interested in. And then you think about, and not just not just some of the, Xbox Studios games, but also I think they did a pretty good job at getting third-party games into the service as well. At least for me, games that I was interested in. Obviously we got Claire Obscure Expedition 33, which was a day one release in Game Pass. And then they did get didn't the Persona 3 Reload, didn't that also launch Game Pass earlier this year? I forget. I have to go back and look. I think it did.
Yeah, I think there was some Persona remake that came out very early in the year.
Yeah, so that ended up dropping in a Game Pass, and I thought that was a big get for Game Pass, considering and I said this on BRAP rant I did on when was it? Sunday, I think, where I thought that Xbox has done a good job more recently in getting some more Japanese titles into to Game Pass and onto the Xbox platform. So that's just my yeah.
I guess my overall take is, without them capitalizing, without them pairing that with an effort to capitalize on exclusivity, I don't know. It just comes off feeling lukewarm to me overall through the year, because none of those games were available exclusively in Game Pass.
No, they weren't.
So I don't know. I mean, any notion of that being there's only one way that the service is a compelling service, and it's as a budget play, as a value play. And if that's a priority for the individual consumer, then that's the type of consumer it will appeal to. But outside of that, I just don't know that it really had a shiny edge to it this year.
Mm-hmm. But you would agree, though, that in terms of just releases from Xbox published games, that this was a better year than previous years, right?
Yeah, the production pipeline, release cadence of the first party studios,
which you called, by the way.
Yes. Yep.
I think you said this would happen this year.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, not to put an arrogant flair on it, but like I didn't call it. I actually showed the math and the calculations, like why the production pipeline and the productivity of the studios would converge on that timeline. But yeah, and so, and I mean, and that's. And that's the thing. Like, it's if you're looking to pay for a service that is a everyman's kind of type of service, right? That gives you kind of the steady, consistent, like median type of content, then yes, it absolutely did that. I think the flair that it needs like the Stranger Things equivalent, right? It needs, an MCU title showing up equivalent type thing. Like for Disney, it needs something that
Talking about the
moves.
goatees.
Yeah, it needs something that moves the needle beyond just
Yeah.
being convenient.
Yeah, I get that, and that's why I said like it didn't have a game. I mean, like, and should say it didn't have a game. It had Clair Obscure Expedition 33, right? And it had that, and that clearly was a genre-defining game that released in 2025. But from a first party, but let me ask you something. Like, do you think it's fair to take maybe Expedition 33 off the table? I don't know if you're doing that, or maybe you include, you've included Expedition 33 in the conversation here, or your point, but like, what about Expedition 33? Because that clearly had some kind of cultural impact, was a major release. Granted, it wasn't exclusive to the Game Pass, but I think from a value perspective, I think it added a lot of value to Game Pass this year.
Yeah, and that's absolutely what I'm admitting to, is that as a value play, as the budget play, right? Then it makes sense. And if that's what the Xbox brand wants to be and is, then yeah, 5 stars. When you talk about the convenience factor, the reason that isn't that much of a lift is because there's not that much of a convenience value prop to a subscription service when everything is available digitally anyway, and is available in a storefront.
Yeah.
What makes Netflix hum is that Stranger Things is only available via that Netflix subscription. What makes Disney Plus hum is that, when Obi-Wan drops, or Andor, or or Loki, or WandaVision, that it's only available right in the Disney Plus subscription service. So that's like, I feel like that's the type of heat it would need to make it feel like something more than like a pedestrian subscription service, and that's my point.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. And by the way, Logic isn't saying there's anything wrong with that. At least I don't think you are. But
no, I'm saying it.
I know some people will be like, oh,
Oh yeah. People will get in their feelings about stuff all the time.
Yeah.
That if you're bound into that ecosystem and you already have brand loyalty to it, then yes, it delivered upon what you've been asking for. Now, like, there's a conversation to be had about, okay, yes, now let's talk about the fact that you've been paying in, right, to have the service meet that expectation for 8 years, right? And finally in 2025, you got what you've been paying for, right? Then that's a question, right? Do you look at that as sunk cost? Do you look at that like, oh, thank God I hung in there, right? Is this, if Game of Thrones didn't grip you right away, right? Or are you the person who's like, oh, I'm so glad that I hung in for those first 2 seasons, because in season 3 it finally started clicking, But then acknowledge that there are other consumers who are like, if it doesn't click in the first like season or 3 episodes, they're out. So
yeah, absolutely.
Is the subscription service doing what it needs to do to encourage new people onboarding? Now there's growth in subscriptions due to economic factors, right? And due to the fact that we have an affordability problem. I don't think we're at an affordability crisis just yet, but there's absolutely arguably an affordability problem. And so more people are onboarding to the service. Well, notionally, more people are onboarding to the service. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about Call of Duty. But like, is that enough? Yes, there's always going to be people who jump on board because prices get higher, right, outside of the subscription service. But is that the thing that are those the consumers that are really, tethering themselves to you very tightly, right, in terms of brand loyalty? Because as soon as economic factors change to make things look better outside, then those people will likely become part of your churn factor and offboard from the service. So.
Yeah, or you may have people like me who, I look at, because it's funny you mentioned sunken costs. There were times where I wasn't using Game Pass at all. I don't do that anymore. I look at it now. Okay, what does the release pipeline look like? Like what games are coming out the next couple months? And that kind of determines whether or not I decide. And I decide if I want to stay on board or resub up to get to Game Pass. So um, and that to me, I've been thinking about this a bit. Like that kind of begs the question for me as somebody that's on Game Pass PC. Like, is this something I'm going to continue subscribing to into 2026? Because if one or two titles are in that service that I want to play, it may not be worth that. Whatever I pay for Game Pass PC, it may not be worth it for me. This year was because there were certainly more than two games that I played that released on on the service day and date.
Well, there's got to be 6 now, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I include Call of Duty.
Did you play 6 games through Game Pass this year?
I played, let's see, Clear Obscure, Keeper, South of Midnight, Persona 3, Ninja Gaiden. I feel like I'm missing one more. There's another one there I'm missing. I play about 5 or 6.
Okay.
Yeah, about 5 or 6. Yeah. So Logic, what about you for 2025? Like, what were some of your gaming takeaways? In terms of the industry, games you played, the platforms, different platforms.
Well, you mean for me personally, or
Yeah, for
industry?
you
Right, for me
personally.
personally, it's been a really interesting year. I kind of put a lid on my 1-year experiment to live entirely solely on PC and not have consoles. I came back to consoles over the summer. Picked up the Nintendo Switch 2, picked up the PlayStation 5 Pro. Picked up a digital Series X. So yeah, and then it was right back into that struggle, right, between well, there's stuff I want to get to on PC, but I want to get to some of the stuff on console. Seeing some of the console titles come by my windshield, playing Donkey Kong Bonanza, and kind of walking away from that, not really understanding the perspective of people who were equating that title to Clear Obscure Expedition 33, or any of another half dozen games that I played this year. But I enjoyed all of them, and at the end of the day, that ability to just kick back and push a button and immediately get to gaming. Hold on just a sec, sorry. Always has value. So yeah. So it's been a fun year.
Yeah. So, what did you find? Were you gaming more on PC still, even with going back to consoles this summer, or did you find yourself kind of doing like a 50-50 split?
It's been cyclical. I think I'm settling into where I spend most of my time on PC, but I definitely over the summer months and into the early fall.
Yeah.
Between Expedition 33 I played on PC, and then Yotei and Death Stranding 2 I played on PS5 Pro, obviously.
Yeah.
So but there was definitely probably a period of time where I was playing more on console, and then I was also getting back to sports, and there are those titles that are only available on console, MLB The Show, and college football. So there were definitely periods of time where I was spending more time on console, but I'm probably getting back to a point now where it's probably predominantly on PC. So yeah.
Yeah. And so is Claire Expedition 33? Is that still your game of the year for 2025?
For the. It's the best game.
You're gonna say for the gen, too.
Yeah, people are always going to say it's hyperbole, yeah. But look, this is just me and the emotional experience I personally had in the game. It's been the best single player story arc driven game that I've ever played my entire life. and that is because there's a when I say that, like, people need to understand, like, there's a ton of stuff embodied in the Expedition 33 literary framework that, like, hits right in my wheelhouse of, like, everything that I love, from comic books to movies to TV to, my undergrad degree being in history and yada yada yada. So, there are the elements of the story that are, if you read it and interpret it and really follow it, you understand how closely it cuts to, like, a great war movie, um, and how close a lot of the societal things that it brings up is very, very, very similar to Europe in World War One, and, well, more particularly World War One, where they lost an entire generation, of young adult males. Um, so that, the fact that I love period pieces, right, in film, and in literature, and the fact that I love, I forget what the term is that they use for it, but, when I think of it like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Mhm.
It's this term for, I call it fictional history, but it's like when you use a historical basis, but then take a fictional
Yeah.
riff on it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, like, all of those things I love and are in my wheelhouse and are my favorite things from a fiction, make believe, world building type perspective, overall. And so to have a game set in that, and then to have it executed and implemented with the polish that Sandfall did, um, just kind of converged in a thing that for me makes it, my greatest game I've ever played ever. Then I think we've talked about then the fact that a lot of the, familial stuff and the story based stuff that happens is things that I was able to process through the lens of my own, perspective,
Uh-huh.
as a father and a husband, and that also made it very unique,
Yeah.
and just resonated with me, in a way that no other game has.
So wait, you said best game ever. Wow. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely for me. It's I don't know if I would call it. I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to say best game ever, but definitely one of the best games I've ever played for sure. And I think to your point, like the narrative, just the narrative, but the characters, but just tying everything together, the musical score, the emotional impact, the voice acting, right, the visual presentation, like the way they tied everything together was they did so in a way that many games just don't do, right? Like it just for me at least, Logic it hit everything. Like I remember you remember the opening to the Video Game Award show this year, and they opened up with Clay Obscure Expedition 33. Was it Mayo's song that they opened up with? I don't remember, or was it? I don't remember. But like that, I mean that, and some of the plot twists in the game too. But the music, I just remember the music. I remember, you know, I think you were telling me this too, that you would listen to the soundtrack. I have talked to some others who listen to the soundtrack as well. Um,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
but
absolutely.
but I was doing that too. Like sometimes during work, where I would throw on, and I think the last game that I actually did that with was maybe Final Fantasy VII. We think about everyone talks about Aerith's theme song. Um, that might be the last game maybe that I could recall where I did something like that, where I would listen to the soundtrack over and over again. Um, but you mentioned yeah, I thought it was interesting. You mentioned the kind of that historical reference to World War One, right, where they're just throwing bodies at the war. And this is kind of what they're doing in Expedition 33. And there's a map. I forget the map. What do you remember the map where they have the trenches? What's the name of that
Oh
map?
yeah, I think it's the Forgotten Battlefield, I think is what it's called.
Is that what it's called?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that right there, that screams World War One. The trenches, the kind of that dark, that brown tone, the hue to it, like the world, that orange kind of, I don't want to say it's dark in nature, but it's, kind of like this like muted brown, I don't know, orange tone. Um, that kind of set that mood for that map, set the kind of experience, and then you have like all the enemies in there, and then you see like the bodies and things like that, but um the other thing I liked about that I loved about the game is that it, like, I'll be careful how I don't want to spoil anything, but death is, I mean, obviously death is certain for all the characters in this game. We know this, right? Because of the paintress, you know. But there are things that happen in that game where, like, you've accepted that death is a part of that world. I don't know. I don't want to. I'm trying to be careful here, Logic. I don't want to spoil anything, but I guess there's certain things that have happened, even though I was accepting of the reality that death was a certain here, like with these characters, right? Because of the paintress, and there were things that happened that, even though I knew that death was, you know, was a big part of the game, that the way that certain things happened or certain experiences happened, I don't know, just even though I knew that coming into the game, like, I'm trying to be very careful here. There's one particular scene, I think you know what I'm talking about. But that particular scene, Logic, really kind of, even though I knew death was certain, like, it was still a punch in the gut. It made me put down the controller and say, like, WTF, what just happened? Like, not like this. There's that famous that Matrix gif, not like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was definitely one of the best games we've played that I think has come out this generation. Probably the best game, in my opinion, that's come out this generation. So, any other games, Logic, that maybe not resonate with you on the level of Claire Expedition 33, but any surprises?
I can't really say so. I mean, yeah, I mean, Expedition 33 obviously was. Ghost of Yotei, I think, just hooked me a lot more than I thought it would, much more so than Tsushima did. So that was kind of a bit of a surprise, but yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. No, definitely. Tsushima definitely. Look, I like Tsushima, but I think Yotei's a better game, in my opinion. All right. How about some of the bigger industry news here? I mean, I think towards the latter part of the year, we saw Electronic Arts become a, was it 55 billion to make EA private? I believe it was 55 billion.
Yeah, 55, 56. All depending on who's reporting.
I believe that's the largest leveraged buyout in Wall Street history. So we had EA going private again. We had Ubisoft create a new gaming subsidiary with Tencent. And then we also saw kind of a shift, right? With Xbox, not Nintendo as much. The Nintendo Switch 2 released earlier this year and has done well retail. And, they're kind of doubling down on their strategy. Let me grab the super chat. I'm sorry, let me grab the super chat real quick here. By Borbor Country with a $5 super chat. Says, I agree with Logic. The story was great. But everything else, there are better games. That's why I believe that the awards were a little disingenuous. Thank you for that super chat, Borbor Country. But yeah, we're talking release of this Nintendo Switch 2 that came out this year. It's doing well. Believe in it's. I don't know where how it's selling now, but at some point I think it's the fastest selling console in U.S. history, according to Circana. And then we see kind of a little bit of change of strategy here with the other big two, PlayStation, Xbox. So we saw PlayStation not being as closed to the with protecting their ecosystem. And I say protect, maybe not being as archaic as they've been in the past with exclusivity. We did see Helldivers 2 release on Xbox, which again we talked about why that makes sense for a live service game like that to be released on multiple platforms. And then we saw, kind of the big pivot, right, with Xbox, kind of leaning more into that platform agnostic third party publisher, and doubling down on their games being accessible everywhere, and also labeling exclusivity as being, forget the word, Sarah Banya. I think it was it. You say it was an archaic business model. I forget what
I thought
she
you
she
said
actually said.
antiquated.
Antiquated. Thank you. Antiquated business model. So we saw Xbox really kind of double down this year on that strategy, and I think giving us a glimpse into what the Xbox is going to look like moving forward. But back to PlayStation. PlayStation obviously releasing games on PC still, some of their first party exclusives, and then also releasing um, uh, Helldivers 2 on the Xbox as well. So and PlayStation is still, for as far as we know, they're continuing to experiment with PC releases. Although I thought it was interesting that that's not a growth pillar for them now, or not listed as a growth pillar in their last slide deck. Um, and then I think too, it was interesting, Logic. I think Strauss Zelnick this year talked about kind of the shifting strategies in the gaming industry. He thinks it's going to become more open. Um, so it's kind of interesting. I think the conversation around the industry, as we've covered it and we've talked about it, I think the takeaway for me was that we talked a little about it earlier, but that they are segments of the segments of the gaming space, or consumers in the gaming space, that believe that exclusives don't matter, or are dying. That PC's the future, and that exclusives don't matter. And then we look at some of the trends, some of the data we see, and it paints a bit of a different picture from what some of those people are saying. And not just, I think, people, but also, like, I've talked about this, like Chris String, who's talked about the need for, I think, what did he say? We need less powerful hardware or something. And this is kind of based off of the last quarter, per Circana November, of hardware sales being down the most since November of 1995. And I guess, and I bring these things up too, Logic, because again, these are talking points. These are things that that other media sites have covered, that Chris String, that Circana, things, that trends that they've discussed. Obviously, we talked about Strauss Zelnick. But you and I have talked a little bit about this behind the scenes too, and kind of the ups and downs in the industry. In particular, I think about the console space, right? And that kind of that focus on November, right? November being a down year for consoles year over year. And then that further sparking the debate of, oh, well, consoles are on their way down. There's no more money to be, there's no growth. And they compare that to 1995. But I think about 1995, right? And 1995 was the lowest point at that time. And then we see the rebound post 1995. I guess my question to you, Logic, is this just kind of the natural state of things, kind of the ebb and flows of any industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is, I guess a couple of weeks ago, week and a half ago, something like that, I wrote a blog piece and also talked about it on a news podcast. That you remember a few years ago at GDC, when there was an article that you and I discussed, and we're trying to get in front of people, and people were all about their narratives and agendas, and so they like to cherry pick the things that they do here, and don't pay attention to the things that are also put out there. But one of the talks at GDC was from a woman, and I can't remember exactly what her name or role was, but where she talked about, she kind of painted out, hey, this is how games are funded in the gaming industry. And for any of you who study film and understand how movies are financed, there were some similarities into kind of what she painted out. But in that, like, games outside of a platform owner, which I think is another pertinent topic we should get to with regard to Sean Layden's comments and the things that he said about exclusivity when he said, if we are going to have platform companies, right, which is again another factor that people like to skate by. But if you're putting together a game outside of a platform owner window, then the way games are financed are not, it's not like, just one pot of money, right? It's often assembled from various components of funding. And so one of the things that's going to go on with this EA acquisition is that you're likely to see a significant player in the investment space taken off the board, because it's not very likely. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Who knows? But there's certainly rationale that says it's not very likely that you're going to see Electronic Arts continuing to invest in its EA Partners program, creators networks, the types of things that cause it to invest money in Hazelight and get you things like It Takes Two and Split Fiction, that you're not likely to see in Unraveled, Sea of Sorrow, or Sea of Solitude, Lost in Random, or even Kingdoms of Amalur. So, there's a significant impact that could potentially come out of that acquisition if you take, X percentage of total funding that goes out into the ether of the gaming market, and you just whack that and take it off the table. Now that it'll be interesting because, we've seen indications that indicate a lot of that investment has been coming back. Everybody kind of clammed up in the post-pandemic timeframe. But will it be enough to compensate for what, EA is putting out there? I don't know. And what are the platform owners going to do? PlayStation obviously has its regional hero programs. But is Xbox going to continue funding its hero programs? Given, the changes that they've talked about in their strategy and the types of content they want to make, I don't know. So those things to me seem very cloudy and uncertain.
Yeah, and the Layden comments were kind of interesting. He mentioned he doesn't see exclusivity going anywhere anytime soon. To your point about being a platform owner, and I don't I don't disagree that the idea of exclusivity has evolved. I mean, clearly it has. If you look at what Sony's been doing with I think like Helldivers 2, Helldivers game on PlayStation 3, PS4 probably would have never saw the light of day on an Xbox console. But then you think about the economics around live service games and how those are different from from not first party, but single player kind of games, and where it makes sense, right? And Layden talked about that. Like he said, and that the video, I forget who the interview was with again, but he talked about that. Like, yeah, and with a live service, game, it just makes sense to have it open to more platforms. He talked about development of multiplat being that, you can, you have to code to the lowest common denominator. And then with the exclusive games, you can pull all those levers to 11, right? And so, and we talked about this, B Money was on Sunday, Logic. And I said, one of the things that I was kind of, and while PlayStation did release, Ghost of Yote, and they did have Death Stranding too. I think in comparison to the PS4, I do feel like with the PS4, they did have more first party games that were released than this generation. It seems like this is a bit slower, and that could be by design. Maybe they're looking at this console life cycle being extended out even, beyond another 2 years, right? And if you're, I don't know if you caught this, Logic, there's some rumors, some speculation going around, a couple articles. Red Tech Gaming, who we've had on the show before, he had a video about this, about the potential next Xbox and PlayStation 6 being delayed because of RAM prices. But I guess if we're talking about 2025, I think my only complaint about the PlayStation 5 this year was that, yeah, we did get Ghost of Yote. We did get Death Stranding 2. Um, but outside of that, I mean, like I can't think of any other, big first party, PlayStation games that came out this year that I was interested in. Or, if I look back at PlayStation, one of the things B and I talked about was, like in between those big first party releases, they'd often have, these smaller titles, and Gravity Rush always comes to mind for me for whatever reason. Which if you haven't played Gravity Rush and you enjoy platformers, I would encourage anyone and everyone to try it out. It's actually a port of I think a PlayStation Portal game to console. It's actually a really good port, and Gravity Rush 2 is actually really good too. But then you talk about the closure of Studio Japan. Um, but but that's kind of been my one complaint 2025 for PlayStation 5 at least, is that they didn't have that what I become accustomed to in terms of releases, the cadence of first party releases like they did with the PS4. Um, but I do think Logic. I do think that exclusivity, and while it's evolved, and when I say evolved, I think it's evolved to where, I mean, obviously, like with PlayStation, right? They're willing to put their games. It's still platform first, right? It's still like, hey, if you want to play, God of War, like if you want to play day one, you're gonna have to come to us to play it. You're gonna have to buy a PlayStation. And if you want the optimized God of War experience with all the bells and whistles to take advantage of the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 5 Pro and the haptic feedback. Because I don't know, Logic, I don't think, and maybe I've asked this question to you before. I don't think all of PlayStation's PC ports are supporting DualSense haptic feedback, right? Like the haptic feedback features on PC.
I think they are if you play them on Steam.
Are they? Are they okay? Um, but again, like if you want to play those games, day and date, you're gonna have to come to us being PlayStation. So like I don't disagree, Logic, that in a sense like exclusivity's evolved a bit, especially even with PlayStation, right? I mean, Nintendo's still doing Nintendo's thing. You want to play Mario or Zelda, you're gonna have to buy Nintendo Switch too. There's no workaround around that. Although I had some folks remind me that you can emulate games on PC, but that's not the point. So back to PlayStation. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's exclusivity. Not all their first party games have been ported over to PC, but that evolution of exclusivity has changed a bit, even for PlayStation. But that being said, despite the narrative of 2025 that exclusives don't matter, and kind of what Sean Layden said about being a platform owner, I don't think, Logic, that exclusives are going away. I still think that they are valuable differentiators for platform owners, for even consumers. I did read an article by a fan site that said, exclusivity, like there's no, or actually, but not by, actually by a fan site, and doubled down by a content creator that there's no real value of exclusivity consumers. I'm like, no, there clearly is. We talk about when I heard Layden say, with exclusives, you can, in terms of development, you can kind of pull those levers to 11, all those levers to 11, right? And when I think about that, I think about that, and I've talked about this on Sunday, that at least for me, Logic, like when I've always bought and purchased a new console, you talked about going from 16-bit to 32-bit with the Sega Saturn, right? I would imagine the expectation back then, and even now today, is, hey, like when we spend $400 or $500, or we're spending more this console generation, that we're going to get better looking games, right? Games that are better performant on that hardware. And I always look to better performant or kind of pushing the limitations of hardware. I look at those really coming from first party games, and I think that can, for some people, not all people, provide some kind of ROI with that, that $400-$500 investment that they put into that piece of hardware.
Well, part of the problem with the argument those people make is that the thing people like to skate by is it's the argument is so ground and anchored in this schoolyard rap battle, street cred notion of PlayStation versus Xbox. And the reality is that no, it really comes down to a matter of quality. And there are those of us that value quality. And like you mentioned with Sean Layden, and as a person who works in software engineering, it is, as I've said it many times on the show, it is a fact that when you limit the deployment target for software, you increase your chances of having of creating a successful creative work. You're able to code closer to the metal. You're able to pull all the tricks. And so I want the highest quality games that are possible. On PC, we achieve that a lot through brute force. Right? we just build an incredibly huge cases with 360 millimeter. like great Scott, dude. Like when I started building PCs, right? You had one little single fan, right, to cool your CPU. Then I saw the time as like we just got to these huge monolithic blocks that look like 2001: A Space Odyssey sitting on top of your CPU to keep it cool, right? Then we started packing dual 120 millimeter fans on either side.
Logic, wait, we now have radiators.
Yeah, that's what, like literally we are cooling our PC enclosures with the same methodology that we use to cool internal combustion engine vehicles to transport 4 human beings, right? At speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. It's crazy. It's insane.
I mean, I'm looking at, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm looking at my 3070 GPU. I don't even think that my 3070 could fit inside my PlayStation 5 Pro. It's so thick. And I think the 50 series cards now are I don't know if they're thicker or longer. I know they're longer, right? Than the 30 series cards. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, these things are gargantuan, right? In comparison, but to the internal guts of a gaming console. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So we just brute force and muscle our way through to get to great performance. But I'm like, but then the technical field, right, in that the developers are faced with is they don't know where their game is going to get played. And so they have to pick and choose, and they have to optimize around the efficiency of what hardware targets they're going to make absolutely certain the game works on, and be less concerned about other hardware targets, and just hope that Windows and abstraction layers and other efforts for interoperability and compatibility, right, cover down on bugs, and that they through testing can discover a vast majority of the bugs, right, and squelch the volume of potential noise that is going to come out of this release. When you're on a console, obviously you're not faced with that problem, and so you have an opportunity to make an efficient SDLC and then make very performant software. Those things equate to quality, and there are those of us who want quality.
Yeah,
and there's a crowd of people who hand wave and say that that's not an issue, and say that that's not a valid concern. But like I said, there are those of us who simply want quality, and I'm with Layden. I don't think every PlayStation game that comes out needs to be exclusive. I don't think, well, I mean, every Nintendo game that's going to come out is going to be first party game is going to be exclusive. But when it comes to multiplayer games, that's fine for that stuff to go other places. Multiplayer games tend not to be so reliant on being heavily optimized for a singular hardware target, right? Those are games that probably benefit the most from having the widest reach in terms of you want a center of a meatball baseline of performability that is relatively equal across, right, some median, and that's fine, and that's what best supports that business model. But single player games, there are single player games that benefit from having a singular hardware target, and so I want those titles to be available on the market, and I want to be able to play those games should I make that choice.
Yeah,
I think the big argument that I've constantly gone to, and this is where I get frustrated, is if all of these things are true, if people don't buy exclusives, if people don't buy consoles for exclusives, if they don't really matter, then none of these people should be angry. They should just let the process, right? Let the process flow and let the market find equilibrium. If what they assert is true, then quite frankly, they could keep their mouth shut about it and never mention it. And the industry should just find its way to land at that point and stop making those exclusives. And then you wouldn't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But while people want them, however small that number is, then the thing that we should not be advocating for, and this is where I have probably my largest point of umbrage with the religious zealots who are in this corner, what we should be pushing for is we should be pushing for multiple business models, multiple development models, and a lot of variety and a lot of choice from suppliers so that buyers can make the choice.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't be advocating for legislating that it must be this way, it should be this way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have some moral issue with exclusives, then I mean that I guess the only thing I can tell you is that that's going to be a hard life for you to live, because not everybody sees it as a moral issue, and you're going to be upset for a very long time, I guess.
Well, clearly not everyone sees the moral issue. We see that with, we see that in the gaming industry. We see that in other entertainment mediums too. You talked about Netflix earlier, Stranger Things, and Disney Plus and some of the exclusive content that's that you could only get there. But yeah, it's interesting logic. Like as I think about 2025, my takeaway from the industry perspective, like in terms of like the different business models, and I agree with you, by the way, that that perhaps we should be celebrating the fact that we have different business models to choose from, more choice for consumers. And that's kind of my takeaway of 2025, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything. And for those who may remember my reaction to Halo, and that's actually the other thing for 2025. The big thing for me, who would have thought Halo would be announced for PlayStation? Like I never thought in a million years that would ever happen. And then for that announcement to happen, and then the the Halo Studios community manager wearing a PlayStation t-shirt. And so yeah, but no, I mean to your point, Logic, like my takeaway in terms of the business models and what we learned 2025 in terms of what Nintendo's doing, PlayStation's doing, Xbox is doing, while I might not agree with all aspects of how these companies execute their vision and their model and whatever, I do see value in the fact that we have three different companies. They're doing slightly different things that offer a variety of choice as consumers, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think to your point, right? Like, and maybe you're saying, like, you probably agree with this, like we should be championing these things, right? Instead of tearing down those different business models or trying to prove, which one's the future. It's speaking absolutes, right? That this is the absolute future, and consoles are dying, that exclusivities are antiquated, and this and that, or Xbox, nobody wants Game Pass. I mean, clearly there's people that do want Game Pass. I think there's a lot of energy that's wasted on that, as opposed to, wait a minute, like we have these three different models that we can choose from as consumers. Like that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, and you asked the question earlier, how was I spending my time, right, on the different platforms? And I'm like, yeah, that to me is what I find enjoyable, is that there is that choice, that I can play an exclusive on PlayStation. I can go over to Xbox and play a game that, where I have, that's mapped to an account that is ubiquitous across Xbox, Steam, and if that game is available on PlayStation, even on PlayStation, right? But then I can go to Nintendo, right, to the Switch 2 and play an exclusive, and then I can go back to PC and I can play something that is a game as a service, that rewards me for a long-term investment, right, in gameplay. And then I can switch those up on a day, because what I don't like is I don't like playing in a monotheistic model, right, that dictates to me like this is the way things are. I mean, it's super weird that that's what some people want and some people advocate for. And again, I constantly refer to the cell phone industry, and the PC industry, and we have a walled garden model in Apple, and we have a proprietary license model in Windows, and we have an open model in Linux. And I participate in all three of those compute ecosystems. And if I had to pick one, I could pick one, but I would also definitely say, like, over my lifetime as a technologist and a gamer, which one I would pick has changed. And what I would hate is to pick one and then feel or have it dictated to me that I could never change my mind. Right? Like, you go back and listen to me 20 years ago, Hamp would have never said that he would have, like, just totally embodied within the Apple ecosystem. Never. That's absolutely where I live today. So, and same thing with, Android and iOS. I was a hardcore Android person, and now I exist, almost totally within iOS. So it's just super weird to me that, again, there are people who are very, very, very fervent in their zealotry that there needs to be one business model, and that business model needs to be dictated, and that business model is one that everyone needs to consume under. Like, it's just super weird because it's entirely anti-capitalistic. It is entirely antithetical to what Adam Smith wrote 250 years ago in Wealth of Nations.
Mm-hmm.
It does not map to any notion of economics in a capital market in any academic or scholarly teachings of the world today. And it's just so weird. But they are absolutely armed with torches and pitchforks, ready to storm the Bastille, right, and burn the castle down and eat the rich, in an effort to push this, religious agenda. And I don't get it. Just let people consume games, and the industry and the market will figure it out. They will achieve equilibrium.
Yeah. Yeah, 110%. Like, it's interesting. Like, you bring up the point, like, of like having the option of a consumer and not having where you play and how you experience games being dictated to you. Like, I love that about today, that I can, like, to your point, like, I can bounce in and out of Game Pass PC, or I can play an exclusives on PlayStation, or I could go to Nintendo and, carry my Switch, sit on my couch and enjoy a Mario game, or a third party title on the Nintendo Switch too. Like, I love having those options. I don't like, we had options, like, growing up, we had options, but not like this, not as many options. And that's what I love about it today. Obviously, like, sometimes people often, I think, Logic, I think part of the problem is when we talk about some of the challenges of certain business models, people take that as like we're hating on a business model. We're not. I think, like, people can't separate those two conversations. But no, I agree with you. Like, I love the fact that that we have the options, right, to go to different storefronts now to consume games. Or, if I want to subscribe to Game Pass, I can do that. Or if I want to subscribe to EA, I can do that. Or Ubisoft subscription, I can do that. That I'm not limited to how I experience games. Let me grab these super chats here real quick, Logic. Bulwer Country, the $2 super chat says PlayStation did not release a single PC port this year. Thank you for that, Bulwer. Sipix38 with the $5 super chat says a lot of kids crying tears of joy over their console Christmas gift. Don't let anyone tell you that kids don't want consoles. Yes, I did see that that video going around social media of the I think he got a PlayStation 5. I think it was a PlayStation 5. Yeah, and who knows? I mean, like, back to the console thing. Like, who knows what's going to happen 20 years from now? Maybe consoles are no longer a thing. Maybe, who knows? We don't know. But for now, I mean, I think I posted this new zoo. One sec here. I had it up. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know. Newzoo had something. I need to find it now. Yeah, News had they had an article. I think this is back April 2025, April this year. Newzoo predicts that console segment will be the primary growth driver for the market by 2027. Between 2021 and 2024, the PC market grew by 1.2%, while the console market increased by 2.1%. It's kind of interesting logic. One of the things that I've seen this year too is that PC's outgrowing console. That younger generation of consumers are going to go to PC. News also says from 2024 to 2027, the company expects PC growth to reach 2.6% and console growth to hit 7% with the market projected to grow to 92.7 billion.
Yeah, I think there's a more. Have you looked at the state of gaming in 2025 from Newzoo?
I think that's. I don't know if I pulled that from the state of gaming. I think I looked at it.
No, the state of gaming just came out in December, actually.
Oh, December.
So it
has
some revised numbers. So, that one, and I think I quoted this somewhere. I can't remember exactly where, but console is forecast to reach 45 billion, which is a positive 4.2% growth year over year. PC is expected to generate 43 billion, which is positive 10.4% year over year.
Oh, I got it here. December. Okay.
Yeah, key takeaways from console. AA franchises dominated the console top 10, with major publishers and established IP capturing the majority of revenue. EA led the ranking with 4 titles driven by its sports portfolio and strong premium release strategy. Sports titles claimed half of the console top 10. All of them annualized franchises, reinforcing the enduring strength of habitual play and predictable release cycles on console. But of course, nobody cares about AAA. Platform exclusivity still matters. Pokemon Legends ZA ranked 9th in revenue despite launching on a single platform, with roughly half of sales coming from Switch 2. But of course, exclusives are going away. Top 10 console releases by revenue. EA Football Club 26, NBA 2K 26, Battlefield 6, Madden NFL 26, MLB The Show 25, Assassin's Creed Shadows, College Football 26, Ghost Yote. Geez. Wow. Isn't that surprising? Pokemon Legends Z through Z to A, and Borderlands 4.
Sort of bucks the narrative.
Yeah. Key PC and console engagement insights. Live service titles dominated MAU rankings on both PC and console. Games such as Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox continue to function as platforms, supported by constant updates, social systems, and creator ecosystems. Only one 2025 release entered the top 10 by MAU across platforms, driven by a free-to-play extension that significantly expanded reach post-launch. Shooter preferences diverge by platform. PC shooters emphasize mastery and precision, while console shooters skew more towards accessibility and franchise familiarity. Annual franchises perform more strongly on console than PC, reflecting different engagement patterns across platforms. And so that's kind of part of the bellwether that tells you why there are certain EA games that are available on console that are still not available on PC. Top 10 PC games by average MAU: Counter-Strike 2, Minecraft, Roblox, Battlefield 6, Fortnite, Sims 4, League of Legends, Dota 2, Valorant, and Peak. Top 10 console games by average MAU: Fortnite, Call of Duty, Black Ops 7, GTA 5, Roblox, Minecraft, EA FC 25, Rocket League, Battlefield 6, Rainbow Six Siege, and EA FC 26.
Yeah, this is I'm going to drop the link in the live chat here. Everyone should read this. This is really insightful. And again, sort of really bucks some of the narratives that we have seen over the course of this year. I just put the link there in the live chat for everyone who's interested. It's interesting logic. Look at like key PC console engagement insights, live service titles dominating MAU rankings on both PC console. So what was the number that we heard from Circana? Like, is it 40% of gamers spend their time on live service games?
No, it's that it's that gamers on Xbox and PlayStation expend 40% of their total gaming time in the top 10 gas games on those platforms.
Okay.
Black hole games.
Gotcha. Okay.
And going back to narratives, the mobile is everything. Mobile is expected to generate 108 billion, which is up 7.7% year over year. So that's in comparison to PC's growth rate, which is 10.4% year over year. Again, that's of course just a singular year, but lots of people run around tongue wagging about mobile is everything, but haven't actually looked at the data. Supported by new hits and resilient evergreen titles, publishers such as Century Games and Tencent demonstrated that mid-core mobile experiences continue to command attention and spending. Mobile's second consecutive year of growth indicates the segment has stabilized following post-pandemic normalization. Now, on other episodes and in blog posts and on other news shows, I've also talked about the significant hyper concentration in the mobile market, right? That it's a very, very, very small number of titles, even more so than the numbers that I've quoted with regards to Steam, that really break out and make the vast majority of the revenue. And then you have, tens of thousands of other games that make no revenue or are just people, flinging themselves against a brick wall for no gain. And that goes back to the, games need to be on every platform thing that I've mentioned before. There needs to be more due diligence and more granularity in pulling that apart, because if it's the argument, because from that argument they extrapolate to the PlayStation should put its games day and date on PC, and I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago where I debunked that, because I'm like, when you look at how much money PlayStation makes on PC off Steam now, it's very small.
Yeah, it's like single digit percentage or something.
Yeah, it's like 2% of their total revenue. And I'm like, and so you want them to, we do this, games need to be on every platform, but we don't then converge that with, okay, there are these black hole games that are available on every platform that already occupy 40% of gamers' attention, right, on PlayStation and Xbox. And so, conjointly with all the people who are like, it doesn't make any sense to do anything but, live service games and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whenever you deploy, you're up against those games, and you're up against the notion that a person has to decide that they're going to not put 2 to 4 hours into their Fortnite Battle Pass or Call of Duty Battle Pass or whatever to go off and experiment and taste test this new experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then no matter how good that is, you're still fighting against the notion of, are they then going to stick with that toe dip or get back to the thing that they've already sunk hundreds of hours into? It's not an inviting competitive premise, right, for you to consider. And so,
no, I mean, you're I mean, this is kind of, it's funny, like you mentioned this, I don't mean to interrupt, but you mentioned this, and they talk about, so the argument that I've seen is, well, it's hard to pull people away from consoles because they're invested in the ecosystems. Well, that holds true for people who are on these like living digital ecosystems like Fortnite, Minecraft. It's the same thing. Let's start. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And then I'm like, so the competitive premise is, if I'm going to put my games on every single platform, one of those platforms I'm talking about going to is Steam, where there are 19,000 games published every year. And an incredibly small percentage of those even clear 100K. So none of these things are the simple, absolutist, binary, choices that people make them out to be. Just do this and you'll make more money.
Yeah, just put your games everywhere, you'll make more money. Exclusives don't matter. People don't see value in them. And the PC thing's kind of interesting too, because, I'm wondering if, a consumer perspective, if you're invested in an ecosystem, right? And it's kind of I just thought about this as you brought up, if I've spent, hundreds of hours in Fortnite, am I really going to, offboard into, you know, Battlefield RedSec? I might dip my toes, right? But am I going to give up all that time, and gear and everything that I've accumulated in Fortnite? Am I going to toss that to the side to play something new? Yeah, maybe some people will. I'm not going to say it's a net zero, but yeah, but most people probably won't. And so it got me thinking, like, I wonder if that, we think about like how that applies to, consoles, those console ecosystems. You have people that are invested in those digital libraries now and in peripherals and, their friends list. And, they've made a significant investment in time and money into these platforms. Um, and I would imagine with that investment, you probably have more eyes on your first party stuff, right? Than you would if you're releasing the PC day and date. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to what I'm trying to explain here makes sense, logic. But basically, what I'm saying is like I imagine like if you're probably more willing as a consumer, right? When you have some skin in the game, right, to maybe take a look at some of those first party exclusives than if you would if you're on like an open platform like PC.
Yeah, they definitely will pop on the horizon of the landscape more so than they will, amongst the field of the undead that you're presented on PC.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always said that. I always thought that, when you have skin in the game, when you're invested, like you're probably more likely to be like, hey, like I'm going to take a look at this thing, right? When you spend $500 on a console, and this is, again, I'm not saying this is everyone. I would imagine that you're probably looking at these types of games at, like Layden says, is pulling these levers to 11, and that's why I don't understand the argument that there's no value in the exclusives. Yeah, are they, are they as are they the, key differentiator as they were maybe 20 years ago? Maybe not. For some people they are. But they're still a thing. We grab this super chat from Bulbor Country. Bulbor with a $5 super chat says everything you just read comes from PC gamers because they're the ones that don't get the best games. They always miss out on the newest Mario or God of War. Bulbor, you're gonna have some people coming after you. Those the potato PC owners. So, well, I'll say this, Logic, just to kind of give you my final thoughts of 2025. Great year for gaming. And I think about all the great games that were released this year and kind of what you talked about earlier, just the difference that the variety of choice we have now in 2025, I think is awesome. And I like that we have three competitors that have slightly tweaked their business models and are slightly doing things differently.
And you're going to have more choices next year when the Steam Machine shows up.
Oh, that's right. The Steam Machine, 2026, early 2026. Yeah. That's right. I forgot about that. Day one purchase for you, Logic? Are you kind of not? Are you not interested in it?
I'm day to day, and let it be said that I will always capitulate and admit to the notion that at any moment in time, FOMO may grab me by the leg.
FOMO's real.
I said I was not all that hyped for the Nintendo Switch 2 myself personally. Actually, I think I told the story. I was actually out the day. First of all, I didn't even realize it was launch day. But I had made the decision I was coming back to consoles, and I was actually going out to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro. And I went by GameStop. Actually, it's now that I think about it, the story is actually amazingly similar to how I bought my first Xbox. Because same thing, I just wandered into GameStop. Having recently, I'd been out of the country and had completely forgotten and had no notion that it was Xbox launch day. And I just walked into GameStop, and there's a big Master Chief, stand up thing, paper cutout, cardboard cutout thing in the thing. I was like, oh man. But in similar fashion, I walked in and I was like, "Oh, it's Nintendo Switch 2 launch day," and I was like, "Oh, and you guys actually have units?" Like, and so I wound up buying one. Um, but yeah. So at any moment, FOMO may grab me. It was interesting. I can't remember who did it, but somebody like put the parts together that had a similar performance envelope to what we expect the Steam machine to have. And it was not particularly impressive. Um, and I just thought about like all the rigs that I have in the studio, and I was like, I don't, if I buy it, it's going to be a fashion buy for me. It's going to be because I want to have a setup that has like my Mac Mini M4 and a Steam machine on it, wired into the same monitor, and for like that workstation to have like the super clean, look, and to be a place where I can sit down and do both like content creation and get some gaming in. But like that would be the reason that I would buy it. I mean, across the spectrum of gear that I have now, which runs from an RTX 3080 Ti up to an RTX 5080, with 4 stops in between. I don't have any need for it. And there was a time where I was looking at it, I was like, well, if I've got to upgrade one box or like build one new rig next year, maybe I would just get a Steam machine instead and not be bothered. But looking at the performance specs I saw, I was like, well, this won't even really take me, outside my RTX 3080 Ti performance envelope. So I don't know that I would do that. But like I said, it's a chance that it could be a fashion buy. Like I said, just for me to put it on the workstation where I have my Mac Mini M4 and the ultra widescreen monitor.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know. I think for me, it's going to come down to pricing. Price of performance. I don't know. We'll see. I need to see how this thing performs, real world. It looks cool, but I don't know. We'll see. And we don't even have they haven't even, I mean, I know it's rumored, early 2026? January, February 2026, I think.
There's been, remember the byline we've had during the year is that that 40% number, people kept like, walking that dog across the street, and like 1 week it was 40%, the next week it was 50%, the next week it was 60%. I've heard similar to the Steam machine launch date. I swore that what they said was first half of 2026, and now I've heard people quoting it as Q1 2026. I'm like, they didn't say Q1, they said first half of the year. So
so we could be looking like later on the year then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's interesting they haven't given us a price yet. And I wonder, my concern is that because there's some sticker shock associated with that price point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, my own personal belief is that's not the case. Like, so number one, I don't think. I don't think anybody that I know that I can think of has any notion of a clue of what this thing should cost. And so therefore I think no matter what, the price is going to be sticker shock to everybody. I don't think they're keeping it close to the vest because there's bad news. I think they're keeping it close to the vest because they don't know. Because tariffs and other things. I also think for Valve, what I suspect is they don't want to bother telling you the price until they're putting it up for pre-order. Like, what the value is to Valve of them telling you the price now, if they're not going to put the thing up for pre-order, I don't know. I don't see what that buys them from a business perspective. I see them just putting up pre-orders on a day. Maybe they'll announce it on like their YouTube channel that like pre-orders are going live. With some additional, technical information that they haven't filled in the blanks on yet. But I suspect that's the way that we'll know about it.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely looking forward to learning a bit more about its pricing. So let me grab this last super chat from Bullboard Country with another $5 super chat. It says, Happy New Year's, gents. My dinner will be enhanced by Hatizaki whiskey and what is that? And True Live Hybrid? I don't know what that is. But Happy New Year to you as well, Bullboard. Enjoy the whiskey, sir. All right, Logic. That's all I have for 2025. Anything else?
Yeah, I don't have anything else. I guess that Harazaki whiskey is a Japanese whiskey.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
How did Zaki, yeah.
Yeah, which is very interesting because I went to the not Korean, the Thai noodle place
Mm-hmm.
the other day, which is, I mean, it's owned by a Thai family, but they serve it's really pho. I mean, when you look at like their menu,
Mm-hmm.
but they serve lots of entrees from lots of different Asian cultures.
Oh wow.
But I went bold. This was the day I was out Christmas shopping when you were trying to call me, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yep,
went
yep, yep.
and I went bold. I was like, I'm out Christmas shopping. I decided I'd stop and just grab myself some lunch, and so I went with the sake. Whew. Yeah,
Oh
I
man.
was not. And I've had
Do you,
sake before, like, but
you,
man,
do you go with warm sake or cold sake?
warm. Yeah, they give you like it's a significantly sized like bottle,
Oh
and they pour it in like the hot decanter, obviously.
yeah.
But like she brings the thing to me, the decanter's full, and then the bottle still has sake in it. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, and that it hit me like a Mack truck too.
No, I bet it's funny. I went out last night with my wife. We went to a local brewery. Had an IPA, hazy IPA. I haven't had an IPA in probably a year. Had a hazy IPA, and I was like, how do I ever like this stuff? Like, I don't know, because I'm accustomed to drinking like lighter beers now, and the hazy it was just too heavy. And then it's probably about 6.7% alcohol. And I had one 16-ounce glass. I was buzzing. But I haven't had it's funny, I haven't had sake in, oh my gosh, and it's been a long time. Probably a decade, at least a decade. And I've actually I've never had Japanese whiskey before. I'm gonna have to try that. Maybe try that in the new year. Give me an
Yeah,
idea,
there,
Woodward.
there are certain drinks that I put in certain like there's certain stuff that I don't drink unless it's a night, like unless the plan is to rage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to move sake over into that bucket.
Exactly. Oh man. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone the live chat. Thank you everyone for the super chats. I really appreciate it. Nate says, I don't drink at all. All I take is RPG straight to my veins. But yeah, thank you everyone in the live chat for hanging out with us this afternoon. Really appreciate the support. Do me a favor, hit the like button. And please, everyone have a happy and safe new year. We'll be back next year, 2026. We'll be back to our regular scheduled time, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next week. Logic, also want to thank you as well. It's been a pleasure podcasting with you another year. So really appreciate it as always. And hey, everyone, yeah, be safe, and have fun this evening. Enjoy time with friends, family. Or hey, some people game on New Year's, so that's your thing. Enjoy that as well. But we'll be back next year, 2026, back next Wednesday, January the 7th. Logic, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, man, I don't have anything to add.
All right, everyone. We'll be back next year. Everyone have a happy and safe New Year. We'll catch you next time.